As you should probably know, the comics industry is not where it was 10 or 20 years ago. Over time, more lines, fewer room, and higher costs have caused sales to decline while saturation has skyrocketed. Whereas once the sales and optimism soared around all over the place like the stars of the panel themselves, these factors have caused saturation to increase significantly. Therefore, in order to draw attention, some superheroes have resorted to shock techniques, gory acts, or simply hot content. The following stories are not only improper for kids, they are inappropriate for reading in general, whether it is because of sexual misconduct, antiquated ideals, or plain old racism. Welcome to Concept, and these are the 10 most misplaced DC Comics storylines ever. Number 10. Cinder uses more sex to murder sex criminals. The story of Deathstroke and a group of specialized villains was briefly the focus of the Teen Titans comic book. And believe me, these villains don't get much more specialized than Carla Moretti, aka Cinder, an Italian woman with the ability to transform her body into molten lava. Titans villains Forhigh stated that Cinder's origin tale began when, as a youngster, she was molested by her uncle in a misguided attempt to address a significant issue. She now spends her days seeking out sex offenders, having sex with them, and then turning a certain part of her body into lava to burn the offenders off. It seems like a strange way to exact retribution, doesn't it? Simply put, why the hell does she need to engage in sexual activity with them in order to exact the desired retribution? We'll never understand why the horror of this character's sexual assault was used as a cheap gimmick. Number 9. Superman constructs a robot to scold Lois Lane. As everyone is aware, Lois Lane is an investigative journalist who has won a Pulitzer Prize. It is embarrassing to look back at comics from older eras and see what they did with her, since she is so different from the damsel in distress of old. Consider Lois Lane, who appears in the comic books as Superman's girlfriend. In one plot, Lois moves inside the Fortress of Solitude to show Superman that she is prepared for marriage. After a string of mishaps, Lois is repeatedly slapped by a robot that resembles Superman. She is unable to sit for days after the incident, but she feels vindicated for being a nasty girl since she feels she deserves it. Even worse, Superman had always intended for this to happen. Number 8. Deathstroke sleeps with the fiancé of his son. Deathstroke, the Terminator, is a family man at heart. Despite how he may appear, he cares strongly for his son Jericho and is concerned when he begins to think that Jericho's fiancé Etienne might possibly be a spy, despite his difficulty in expressing his emotions. As a result, he approaches her, seduces her, and has a sexual encounter with her just as any loving parent would. I'm sorry, did I accidentally skip a few pages? Actually, that is what took place. Even worse, she isn't even a spy, and yet wants to stay with Jericho. Number 7. Green Lantern is dating Arisa, a 13-year-old girl. The 13-year-old Green Lantern decided she wanted to act on her feelings by utilizing the mystical power of her ring to seem as an adult woman rather than the youngster that she was, because she had a big old crush on old guy Hal Jordan. Then she declared her love to Hal and informed him that she was of age for her alien species because she was 13 years old. I can hear you saying, of course Hal Jordan wouldn't fall for that and wouldn't date this actual 13-year-old kid. Wait, what? That's not what he did. Not at all. That is not at all what he did. He was her soul date. The Green Lantern had an ongoing relationship with a real child. Number 6. In the future, there are only white people. After a while of working on the Superboy comic, Mike Grell picked up on an odd detail. Even though it was set in the 31st century, the majority of the cast and supporting actors were white, unless they were blue-skinned aliens like the Legion of Superheroes. Dark Class. The population of the 2900s was quite homogeneous. Grell made repeated attempts to include black characters, but Murray Boltinoff, his editor, specifically prohibited it. Grell would inquire as to why there weren't more black people, and Boltinoff would respond that he had a plan for an explanation, but that he would have to wait and see what it was. Boltinoff would eventually make his grand scheme in his story known. Mazal was a segregated island metropolis that was sealed off from all other forms of civilization, and where every black person on Earth had relocated. The inhabitants of Mazal, in particular their leader Tarak, were vehemently opposed to coexisting with or cooperating with anyone who was not a black person. Whatever it was, there was supposed to be an analogy here. Mike Grell utterly detested it, calling it the most racially offensive idea I've ever heard. As a minor kind of retaliation towards his editor, he made sure to draw Tarek wearing the silliest outfit imaginable. Number 5. Wonder Woman stays behind to complete administrative tasks. With her roots in the feminist movement, Wonder Woman is unquestionably the most recognizable female superhero of all time. She had always been a vital part of the DC Trinity and the Justice League, but the Justice Society of America treated her with complete disdain. It couldn't just be a boys' club, of course. The JSA then extended an invitation to Wonder Woman to work as their secretary. William Moulton Marston, the Wonder Woman co-creator who is a fierce feminist, does not seem to support this sort of behavior. Sadly, he was the one who came up with this. Yes, the man who described his creation as the brand new kind of woman who, in his opinion, ought to control the world, also decided that she was the kind of woman who ought to remain at home while the men went off to save the day, typing up agendas. Number 4. Superman and Mermaid share a bed. Superman Year 1, published recently by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr., was a peculiar creature indeed. Even the most casual superhero fans are familiar with and have heard of Superman's origin tale. On the other side, Miller and Romita felt that they required 3 prestige format issues to tell their version of the tale, and somehow managed to bring nothing new to the narrative. Well, not really anything new. The difficult middle issue makes a strange and strangely needed detour to Atlantis, while the first issue centers on Clark's childhood in Kansas, and the third issue is entirely about Superman making his public debut in New York. Here, a mermaid named Lori and Superman start dating and having sex. He must first prove himself by taking on her father, the strong King Poseidon, who also desires to have a sexual relationship with Lori if he is to stay with her. Of course, Superman triumphs and ascends to the throne of Atlantis. However, I believe that whatever occurred is still quite unclear. He assures Lori that he will live in Atlantis with her for the rest of his days, and that he will never abandon her. At the start of the subsequent issue, he departs without saying goodbye to anyone. Number 3. Batman betrays one sidekick to get another one pregnant. Although fans of his comics are aware that this is untrue, Batman has a reputation for being the gloomy, brooding figure who only works alone. Bruce Wayne, the head of the Bat family, has one of the most extensive networks of any superheroes, with more sidekicks than you can shake a sight stick at. You would think that he would put a lot of effort into maintaining this support system so that it continues to feel, well, supported, and wouldn't risk destroying it in order to get his rocks off. It turns out that you would be extremely wrong. It is revealed that Batgirl, Batman's second partner and the daughter of his best friend, had a connection with Robin, the Dark Knight's first companion, in Batman Beyond 2.0, a comic book sequel to the animated series set in the future. Is there something wrong with that? The two had a lot in common, and were roughly the same age, after all. Then it is revealed that Batgirl was actually still seeing Robin when she became pregnant, but it wasn't by him. Rather, it was by Batman, her boss and father figure, no doubt. Number 2. Great power entails great responsibility. Being Superman must be challenging. He must be under a ton of pressure to always be prepared to protect the planet from dangers and catastrophes. Therefore, it was hard to hold it against him if he decided to take a vacation from being a superhero and simply go for a long stroll. I mean, this is how Superman works. Superman gives up flying and fighting in the 7-issue series, grounded in a quest to discover who he is and the purpose of his life. His extremely odd, completely out of character decisions, and one scene that is a near exact replica of one of the most iconic scenes from the far better All-Star Superman. How does he attempt to persuade a young girl who is contemplating suicide not to leap off a building? He does, however, encourage her to jump if she has the desire to do so, and assures her that he will not catch her. Fortunately, she ultimately decides not to jump, but Superman makes sure that everyone knows that he was serious about not catching her. Samaritans would disagree with your policies there, buddy. Number 1. You get superpowers from cocaine. You get AIDS from vampires. The Rogues Gallery of DC is renowned for featuring some of the most recognizable villains in all of media. A rather obscure DC comic book from the 1980s called The New Guardians aimed to add some fresh ideas to this cast. But regrettably, what we were left with were 2 of the most ill-conceived villains in comic book history. The first of these was Snowflame, the head of a drug organization in Colombia who obtained his superhuman abilities by consuming cocaine. Snowflame would gain strength and ignite a threatening white fire whenever he inhaled the old white substance. Snowflame managed to develop a cult following from his one and only appearance, despite the irresponsibility of telling impressionable minds that doing cocaine will make you a superhero. On the other hand, the Hemo Goblin, a white supremacist vampire whose only goal was to eradicate non-whites, and who also infected members of the New Guardians with the AIDS virus, is a figure that is unquestionably not a cult favorite, since it compares HIV to vampirism and was utilized for shock value. That sentence just makes me feel awful. Not at all a progressive viewpoint on the subject. Join our community, hit the subscribe button, and never miss out on our latest videos. Your support means the world to us and helps us grow. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.